To this session on the pulling power of ASEAN. It's great to have you all here at a moment when the world is opening up and everybody can travel again. So I'm sure a lot of people in this room who have an interest in Southeast Asia from the West will be going there if they haven't already been. I was recently in Indonesia, met President Jokowi, and it's great to see a big Philippines delegation here in Davos. But all of this is happening at a time of rising geopolitical tensions. I was just doing a Japan session actually next door, and the sense that countries in Asia are being pulled between the rival demands of the US and China is really quite striking. So we have a brilliant panel to discuss these issues. Just going from my left, we have Anutin Charnvirakul, the Deputy Prime Minister of Thailand, Janow, Chairman of Mastercard, but also a distinguished academic, former government official in the US. We have Luhut Pandjaitan, the Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment of Indonesia, I know very close to the President as well. And on the left there, Teresita Sy-Coson, the Vice-Chairperson of one of the Philippines' biggest conglomerates, SM Investments, and I think part of a big Philippine delegation, along with President Marcos, who is here. And in fact, I'll start with a comment that I saw President Marcos last night, and he was saying, a lot of optimism about the region, but he also said, he quoted the famous African proverb, which he said, when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. And the two elephants he had in mind were the United States and China, and he said, we're the grass in Southeast Asia. We're in danger of getting trampled in this conflict. So if I can start with the two politicians who have to navigate this. Deputy Prime Minister, from Thailand's perspective, how do you see the current geopolitical situation, this rise in tensions between the US and China? Because these are both very important relations for you.
Well, Thailand never loves conflict. We try to be adaptive to all nations. If you're talking about China and Thailand, I think more than 80% of population in Thailand call themselves Chinese. Even in the household, many households in Thailand still speak Chinese in the family. So I think Thailand will have to be very careful in handling this situation. But however, we have a very strong and lengthy relationship with the US as well. So we try to be as neutral as we can. And we will mainly decide on things that, would not create any conflict with neither countries. But as long as it serves the benefit of our people, Thailand will tend to go to that direction.
Yeah, because of course the economy of Thailand is deeply integrated with China. I mean, in terms of the investments by your conglomerates, Chinese investment into Thailand. So this American talk of decoupling, it's not really practical for you, is it?
I would say both. Thailand has a trade surplus with both countries. Of course, the United States is by far one of our biggest markets, and we cannot, try to create any discrepancy with them. But lately Thailand has positioned itself in the right path, because we tend to focus more on trade issues with them. We try to avoid having any differences in terms of political aspects. Then we focus more on trade and development partnership. So in Thailand, we are like the country that we welcome all friends. 30 years ago, there were only American-Thai joint ventures in developing our countries. Lately, Chinese play more role, but all in all, both countries are still our good friends and vital to drive our economy forward.
Yeah, and Minister Luhut, you've just come off the experience of Indonesia chairing the G20, incredibly tricky task. Everybody was worried about what happened if Putin shows up, but then US-China tensions, and there was actually a Xi-Biden meeting there. So, having watched all these dynamics close up, what's your feeling about Indonesia? Obviously, you know, it's a huge country in its own right. How do you feel Indonesia and ASEAN should play this new situation?
First of all, thank you very much. I think this year Indonesia is chairmanship of ASEAN, and I think the theme of it is ASEAN Matters, the epicentrum of growth, resonating with the success of Indonesian G20 presidency 2022. I think we are quite confident if we can play our role like this, ASEAN become a center of economic growth in that region, you know. Because if we look at like, you know, Thailand, Vietnam, you know, even Philippines, Indonesia, we are doing pretty good in this time. Although situation in Ukraine is still uncertain a lot, we don't know what's going to happen for the next, you know, I mean, even in this year, so could also impact toward the economy. You asked also the Deputy Prime Minister about China and Taipei and Taiwan. I think also still uncertainty over there. So we can navigate, I think, nicely to maintain the stability in this region as well as the economy as well. So if you look at Indonesia today, I think with the 282 million population, we are still able to manage to navigate in this particular situation. Our economic growth last year, we grew like 5.3%, and inflation 5.3%. And our export last year, it was $293 billion. I think if you look at back to 2021, it was $233 billion. So by showing this one, the confidence within the country today, Indonesia, and also in the region, I think pretty good. So being the chair of the ASEAN today, the spirit of the G20, I think if you look at also the outcome of the G20, you see the bilateral result is around $71 billion. And
sorry, 71 billion in terms of new investment? Or?
Yes, that's I think the deal that we make at the time. So written. Now we follow up all those things.
Yeah.
Some of this is about the JEPT, $20 billion. This morning we had a breakfast also with our the American counterpart. I would like to see the pilot project immediately. I don't want just to, because sometimes I experience now too much discussion sometimes. So I told my counterpart from the US, to John Kerry, I said, why don't we do like this? We propose, but anything you advise to us, we're very welcome. But one thing, don't disturb our economic growth. So whatever it is, you know, because at the end, we have to create job opportunity for the people of Indonesia, similar also to the other ASEAN countries. So again, stability in ASEAN, I think, is going to be good. Although in ASEAN member, I think some also, you know, they have own national interest. We understand that. Yeah. But we also encourage them to understand also the solidarity among the ASEAN countries, which is not also easy. Yeah. But again, with the confidence that we have, because we are successful, I think, to bridge some differences during the G20, which is some people pessimistic at the time, but we, you know, changed the pessimistic to become the, you know, very successful outcome.
Yeah, as you say, you did okay with the G20. Now you've got another chairmanship, ASEAN.
Yes.
And you hinted that there are tensions within it, but also opportunities. Before I move to Teresita, could I just ask you, what do you think the difficult issues are that you're going to have to deal with during the chairmanship? And also, where are the opportunities? What do you want to achieve?
Well, there are so many opportunities. Challenge, yes, of course. Like I mentioned earlier, how to bring the understanding among the ASEAN countries facing one problem, because in the same time they are also thinking about their own national
Are you
interests.
thinking about Myanmar in particular?
Yes, something like that. You touch also.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I try to be polite,
The country we're not allowed to mention. Okay.
Yeah, but it's again, I'm pretty confident. I met also President Philippines 2 days ago, and I understand also he has a wisdom, and and also his relation with President Joko Widodo also doing well. And Vietnam Prime Minister also was in Jakarta last month, so I can see the how do you call it? the feeling, because remember the G20, so many countries are pessimistic about this G20 in Bali, but what happened? With the leadership of President Joko Widodo and how do we manage everything, everybody finally agreed. The last day of the G20 declaration is there.
Yeah. So Teresita, how does it seem from a private sector perspective? I was very impressed by, how many Filipino CEOs have shown up here in Davos, and there was, I thought, a kind of sense of optimism that post-pandemic there can be quite a strong economic rebound in ASEAN. Does that feel like that way?
Yeah, because of the importance of ASEAN right now, and because of the two superpower looking for, competing for the trade of these two countries, of these ASEAN regions. I think Philippines has been able to benefit from it. We're not as active as Thailand, Indonesia, or Malaysia, but somehow if the region grows, we grow as well. So right now, we are looking more into investment. You see, Philippines is more geographically outside of the continent of the ASEAN. So most of the effect of the ASEAN will come very slow to the Philippines. But for us, we are nearest to China. So for the economic side, we actually depend on China. On the political side, we depend on the US. But, so we have to be like the other countries. We have learned to be flexible and neutral.
Yeah, flexible. Do you think you'll be able to stay flexible and neutral as these tensions rise?
I think so, because the ASEAN have matured to a certain level that we depend on each other for strength. And more or less, we have been able to do that. The last few years, we have been looking into how to take advantage of that interdependence in terms of economic growth, stability of the area, and I think we have made some success. So ASEAN for us, for the Philippines, is a strength for us.
Yeah. And Merit, as an American, but somebody with deep knowledge of the region, how do you feel Washington's playing it? Because, obviously, in this growing tension with Beijing, Southeast Asia is critical. Both sides are playing for what happens there. And I guess America, as Teresita says, it has great strengths in security, but in economics, it's not been part of these new trade deals. It didn't join CPTPP or TPP as it then was. And trade, I know you've worked some time ago in the USTR. Are you worried by America's... or put it this way, do you think America's getting it right, or are there things they should be doing differently in the region?
Well, first of all, I think it's a privilege to be here and to hear from leaders from the region. It's a region of enormous economic vitality and future potential. So it's important for global growth. It's important for the United States economy. Of course, China is ASEAN's largest trading partner and has been for many years. And I think recently, has been increasingly important for China as well. So there is a high degree of economic integration. The U.S. is also a very important trading partner, and so is Japan. So I think a conversation about dynamics in the region also need to appreciate the growing role of Japan. Now, ASEAN had, I think, some 5 or 6 bilateral FTAs and then stitched it together into RCEP. I think really Indonesia played a real leadership role in driving RCEP forward. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On that. And as an observer, some features of that framework are not as deep integration as TPP, but it's still very important. It's important both economically and by virtue of the partners in it. The U.S. is not.
I was going to say, as an American, does it worry you that America's not in it and China is?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to just jump to that point without a little bit of context. Sure. And, you know, Korea is a member of RCEP, Japan and China, and the U.S. is not. Meanwhile, you know, when the U.S. was unwilling to take TPP forward, Japan took it forward, and now China has even applied. I can imagine it might take quite a long time to meet those standards, but it does concern me not to have the U.S. You know, more deeply integrated into these emerging frameworks. But there are a multitude of layers developing here. So, for example, even around the digital economy, which is important for future growth and obviously important for Mastercard, where I serve on the board. And, you know, it's a tremendous dynamic there around the digital economy. And ASEAN, I know, has put forward a kind of master plan for 2025 around integration of the digital economy. So there's ambition and growth for deeper integration in areas. Now, the U.S. has put forward recently this Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPAF. It has various pillars. I think it's now engaging with the region around that. And so my sense is there's a lot of interest in exploring what can be achieved.
How much kind of meat do you think there can be in IPAF? I know Jake Sullivan has said, there's the US National Security Advisor, has said there's a lot of interest in the region, but some people say basically they're trying to find stuff they can do because they can't join these trade deals, so they're inventing another thing, but really they should be in the trade deals.
Well, my hope is that the U.S. will come over time to deepen its frameworks. I think the U.S. Vision for TPP around frontier areas is helping to influence how things are evolving and constructive and important. But there is a lot that can be done if countries engage. And so around the digital economy, perhaps around supply chains, around principles, around fairness. So there's potential there.
Yeah. So, Deputy Prime Minister Anutin, how much should we think of ASEAN as a kind of coherent economic and political bloc? Because, you know, coming from Europe, there's a tendency maybe to mistake it for like something a bit like the EU, you know, which is a deeply integrated economic bloc and also has political aspirations, geopolitical aspirations. But ASEAN's very different. But can you have a like sort of something that's a kind of EU light, where you have a real free trade area, real dependence, work together as a bloc, or is that just not going to happen?
I think we have to get all ASEAN member states to mutually agree that we are no good without each other, without the other as well. I think if you look in geographic formation of ASEAN countries, we are the only region that connects West with East. Nobody could pierce through the Eastern Hemisphere without passing through ASEAN region. And 30 years back, we used our former Prime Minister, General Chachai Chunhavan, when we had conflict with Cambodia. He once declared to change the battlefield to marketplace. I think we need to modify this philosophy, because there's no war in ASEAN, but we have competitions.
But you have a war next door. I mean, a civil war in Myanmar. And
among countries we don't have.
Yeah, sure.
So if the major, especially the founding member states of ASEAN, we only compete in trade. We don't have any differences in in politics, or we don't intervene with each other. So why don't we try to change the competition to become competence and make the whole region become competitive? We will therefore be able to blend ourselves with the other economies. But in ASEAN, say for example, in the past we used to try to dig a canal on the narrowest part of Thailand, but that would come with so many political interference. People talk about, even in our own country, people would talk about segregation, talking about divided the land, and talking about competitions. But nowadays, when trade is everywhere, Thailand is now is now planning to build rather than canal, because we think it's difficult to go through this political interference. So we call it land bridge.
Yeah.
We connect, one coast with another coast, but through inland logistics. So nobody could come to us and say, well, you're dividing the country, you're trying to segregate the minority and majority. I would say, I'm just building a track, motorways, logistical network. This is my own business, but it would cost a lot. So why don't a friend from Philippines or from Indonesia, as well as Singapore or Malaysia, you are full of financial resources, come to join as a partner. We no longer competing each other. We would save 4 days in transportation. And we could link the west to the east. And everyone becomes players. Thailand has no restriction in doing that. Talking about our
Singapore likes that.
next neighbor.
Yes.
Okay.
So can I just ask, because there is this perception that Thailand is probably the most
again,
sympathetic to Myanmar,
that's why
the current government. Yeah.
For the time being, with Myanmar, we have to help them. We have no more choice. All ASEAN members will have to help them, or else their people will be everywhere in our country, and we will have to by
But what does
humanity,
help mean,
we have to help them, but we have to help them. We have to in whatever fashion we can. Like for example, in Thailand, the basic thing that we would help them is during the pandemic, we donated all medical supplies, vaccines. We donate everyone along the borders to make sure that they are safe. So my country is safe. But that could go further in terms of economic subsidy, something like that. But we have to work join hand together, and then, we therefore will be able to strengthen. Then, if the economy grows further, we will be the only region that might not be short of laborers.
Yeah.
So these kind of things, we will have to work together and form a belief that with this kind of strength, we can stand negotiating with everyone in the world without being, an underdog to other people.
Sure. Okay, but Minister, from the Indonesian perspective, again, the perception is that Indonesia is a little bit less patient with Myanmar and has talked about, maybe getting much tougher with them. Do you think that's the way to go, that you can't just say, well, we're going to help them because they're not really doing much?
Rahman is not necessarily, less patient to Myanmar, But if you look at back to Indonesia 30 years ago, I think military also controlled Indonesia, I should say.
Absolutely.
But then maturity among the leadership within the military also bring democracy gradually to Indonesia. So today, we don't care whether you are military or civilian.
Yeah.
As long as you are qualified to manage something, they allow you to go there. My background military.
Yeah.
I retired from military. I spent 31 years in the military. But now I'm a civilian. I'm working under President Jokowi, which is civilian. So again, this maybe takes some time also for Myanmar to understand. And we try to share our experience to Myanmar to say, look, yeah, maybe you can also learn something from us. But we're not going to push them to do that because they have their own democracy. Each country has their own democracy. Let them exercise their own democracy. Let them exercise their own democracy, and we can support if they wish. And I think so far our foreign secretary has a quite good direct contact.
They're not very democratic at the moment. I mean, they're not very democratic at the moment. But do you think they're going to hold elections and transition back to?
Well, leave it to them. But we don't want to interfere too much their own domestic issue. Nobody want anybody interfere their own domestic issue. Maybe they have some issue over there, but we continuously advise them, give our own view to the existing to junta today, and I'm pretty sure time is coming. Whether this year and next year, I think they can solve their own problem, but because the spirit ASEAN also could help that. So we'll try also during the leadership of the Indonesia during the ASEAN this year. I will try to approach again. Yeah. So time to time from the military, because some of them are already trained in Indonesia before in the Lemhanas and also in some military school. We'll try to approach them. Not necessary. Military can control everything. Military also can be part of the government. There are so many military also in charge of the government, but if they're not qualified, why should go to be a minister or to be the president? Let somebody else who are qualified to manage this country, like what happened in Indonesia. Yeah. My president doesn't have a military background, doesn't have a top PhD or something, but he has a very good management. He proved it now. If you look at Indonesia today, it's the best in our history, the last 77 years. Our economy, stability, and also downstream industry, digitalized. You mentioned about digital economy. Because of COVID, Indonesia right now, nearly everything digitalized, ongoing now. So you can imagine government procurement of $105 billion, all digitalized this year. We can see the difference. So less and less corruption because of that, because you cannot do corrupt anymore, because you just go to the catalog. You don't need to do tender anymore. Even the military. So you can imagine the military right now procurement go to the catalog. Can you imagine that 10 years ago? No, pa. Yeah. But today, pa, it happened in Indonesia. Yeah. This is, I think, the process that we had to learn. So I believe also if this could happen to Indonesia, could happen also to anywhere in ASEAN members. So I'm pretty confident on that.
So you're sort of saying you can improve Myanmar and other places by example as much as by pressure?
Well, well, again, our policy, we don't want to interfere too deep, too much to the other country domestic issue.
Sure.
Because you don't know exactly what's going on over there. Or other countries try to interfere in Indonesian problem. I say, hey, don't dictate Indonesia. We know what to solve the problem. If you look at the COVID, the very complex issue now, Indonesia is very successful to manage it. Nobody can blame us. Yesterday I met to AstraZeneca. I saw how do we set up the policy based on data, based on the technology. They said, I don't see any country better than Indonesia to tackle the COVID-19.
Okay, let me just ask one more question of Teresita, and then we'll have a little time for questions from the audience. But we heard a very eloquent plea from the Deputy Prime Minister about encouraging others to invest in infrastructure in Thailand. And I know it's a big priority for the Philippines as well, to upgrade infrastructure. And you're also trying to attract foreign capital into that. What needs to be done? What's the scope there?
I guess we just follow our neighbors. You know, there's Thailand, there's Indonesia, and we are inspired by Indonesia because they have double our populations. I mean, more than double our populations, but their growth is better. I mean, no, this year we have high growth, and we will have high growth again this year. The thing is, we don't have a lot of foreign investment, so we look after ourselves, and we were able to make some growth. So I think what we'll do is to emulate our members' country in the ASEAN, and it'll be okay.
But what are the particular strengths of the Philippines? I mean, you have, for example, kind of boomed in, outsourcing. If you ring the Financial Times, for example, the phones are picked up in Manila. We have a big office there doing a lot of work for us. So where do you think the Philippines can grow in what?
I guess we are very low in digital. So I think the Americans are coming in, the American businesses are coming in on the digital side. And we can also look at Indonesia for some of the smaller digital technology. I think we will grow through technology.
Right. Okay. Questions from the audience? Anyone out there who wants to ask something? Yeah, the gentleman over there. If you could stand up and say who you are. That's helpful to the TV.
We respect.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Matt Guilford. I'm a WEF, a young global leader based in Yangon, the country that cannot be mentioned.
Yeah.
And I guess the question that I have for the group, I think to your point, Deputy Prime Minister, one of the worries is that we lose a whole generation, right? Because there's a lot of young people in Myanmar today who feel like they don't have opportunities and are going elsewhere. And we will need those people when we rebuild. So I guess the question is, how can we continue to have growth and investment and development on the economic side of a country like Myanmar while we work through the political issues in parallel?
I think that was for you, yeah.
Well, as my friend from Indonesia mentioned, we can't interfere and involve in domestic political affairs. But we try to help as much as we can. If we don't consider your country a partner or a neighbors, my country would never have more than 2 million workers from Myanmar. We don't call them refugees. We call them friends. We're using their workforce. We try to register them to make sure that they are not secondary to anyone. But there is so much we can do. So as I said, we need to use the strength of ASEAN to send a signal to that country that something must be modified or adapted to make sure that they will be able to go along with us and bring the whole region to stability and prosperity.
Okay. Yeah, gentleman over there. I think a microphone. Anyone?
Oh, thank you very much. I'm Kenji Kawase. I'm a journalist from Nikkei. I'm based in Hong Kong, by the way. I have questions to two ministers with regard to your potential new membership to the ASEAN, Timor-Leste. In principle, last November, you've agreed to accept. And I think Indonesia is very eager to have a new membership. However, there are differences, I guess, in the acceptance level because as we talked about today, different countries in the ASEAN region has different political position. Now, my question is, what are you going to deal with this issue? Because I think this year will be a key year for the accession. Would you please tell us about how the recent situation is? And also the ASEAN centrality. Everyone has to agree. You're adding a new member. How will this affect the decision-making in ASEAN in the future?
Sorry,
Thank you. I think Timor-Leste has a long story, a long history with Indonesia. And I'm part of the history. If you're talking about, Timor-Leste, I just had a meeting also this morning with President Ramos Horta, which is a very good friend of mine. Been friends since 1990, during even the conflict in Timor-Leste. I think we leave it to Janow. We leave it to the member of G20 to schedule when they're going officially enter or join the ASEAN. So from Indonesian perspective, we don't have any problem with that. But then we should also listen to the other member of ASEAN about the membership of the Timor-Leste. I don't see from Indonesian perspective any problem with that.
Okay, John Shipman from the IISS in the front row here. John, could you stand, because they like to see you on camera.
A brief comment and a question. The brief comment is I've never heard any leader in Southeast Asia say, I want to choose sides. All leaders in Southeast Asia prefer to say, we don't want to choose sides. But I think there's a new diplomatic formula that might be consonant with that national sovereign perspective, which is we will not choose sides, but we will take a position. And I think that's important as you engage with other parts of the world, that people know that you will take a position. Taking a position might appear that you are tilting one way or the other, but taking a position means that you maintain your national sovereign strategic identity. Bapak Luhut, Indonesia Ministry of Fisheries has taken a position when Chinese fishing boats are rather too close to Natuna. That's not choosing sides, that's taking a position. So I would invite people to reflect on whether an ASEAN formula that would work would be, we won't take sides, but we will take a position. My question is, we've talked a lot about Chinese economic engagement and American economic engagement, but I spend a lot of time in the Middle East too, and the Gulf countries are extremely interested in Southeast Asia. And again, your own sovereign wealth fund has got some assistance from the PIF in Riyadh and the Mubadala in the UAE. So I wonder whether the Southeast Asians here could say how much the South-South financial and economic flows as between the Gulf and ASEAN might move, and to what benefit to you?
Sure. Deputy Prime Minister, do you have an interest in the Middle East? Do you see money coming in from there?
Oh, definitely. With this pandemic, it has sent a signal to Thailand that we are not only known for being an agricultural country and food and tourism, but also we are superb in providing good medical care to people around the globe. The Middle East is the biggest market for medical business in my country. And Thailand focuses itself to become the health care hub of the world, if we may. But we need collaboration with our ASEAN friends. When you're talking about taking position, we always take our position. Last week, China opened up. They would encourage people from China to tour the world. And Thailand would have to consider very, very carefully as to whether we'll be able to welcome our Chinese friends. And at the end of the day, we decided to take position. We consider warnings, concerns from many other countries, but at the end of the day, we need our friend. We need our economy to grow. So we decide to balance our economy. So that's why we open up freely. Chinese tourists, European tourists, American tourists, they are all, they'll be able, all of them will be able to come to visit our countries on the same basis without any prejudice.
Okay, we've only got like 3 minutes left, so let me take one more question. There was a gentleman in the front row, yeah, just here.
Hello, my name is Teresita Sy-Coson, Minister of Trade from Cambodia. I met both of you here somewhere in Thailand and also in Indonesia, in Bali. I just want to make comments that ASEAN is composed of right now 10 countries, and our RCP takes ASEAN centrality, as the fellow from Nikkei mentioned about. ASEAN centrality is very important for us. Means that all of us has to be as one, working with other regions or countries, as opposed to IPEF. You divided, you excluded some of our countries, part of ASEAN. So I think that it's not the ASEAN centralities that you are working on, which is it's not going to be successful on that matters.
It's about ASEAN centrality, but also I think, Merit, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but the exclusion of some ASEAN countries from IPAF, the US Indo-Pacific Economic Framework.
Yeah.
And is Cambodia one of those countries that's excluded, I guess?
Yes. And you need to know that ASEAN, as a fellow ministers here on the floor of talking about here, ASEAN centrality is very important, and we work on consensus basis. And the feelings about Myanmar, which Cambodia support, is very important, as you mentioned about. This is ASEAN consensus, and so wherever you go, ASEAN has to be as one. This is something that we feel, and on these issues on Timor-Leste also, we welcome this because Timor-Leste geographically is part of ASEAN. So Cambodia supported that.
Could I just ask you a question as a Cambodian minister? I mean, certainly from outside the region, Cambodia has been portrayed as probably the most pro-China country.
It wasn't. Because lately we took the positions against the aggressions of Russia to Ukraine. As you see that we voted against. We are even part of the UN to propose the solutions. And it is a wake-up call to all of you that Cambodia has its own sovereignties and its own position to take charge of our country's destinies. It's not work with us. We already have the same feelings here that we work with China for our own goods, not for China. We work with USAs, the same thing. This is ASEAN ways of doing business. It's not, okay, I'm going to this part, I'm going to that part, hey, I'm taking a block. That's not an ASEAN way.
Okay.
I hope that the ministers agree on that. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're basically out of time, but that was, I think, an illustration. One of the great things about Davos, you not only have very good panels, you have really excellent informed audiences, and very good to get a voice from Cambodia as well. But let me just thank the panel and thank the audience for what's been a really, really stimulating session. Cheers. Thank you so much.